So it being well, Ben can answer that.
This meeting is being recorded.
So it being on or about 6:30, bring this meeting of the Conservation Commission, Easton Conservation Commission, to order, October 4th, 2021. In keeping, let's get some things out of the way here. In keeping with an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency signed into law by Governor Baker on June 16, 2021, this meeting will be conducted remotely over Zoom. Attendance by board commission members will be remote, and remote attendance shall count towards quorum. The meeting will be broadcast and recorded by ECAT. Some other issues here is just please note that on June 23rd, 2021, the commission voted to extend the delegation of signature authority to the environmental planner, land use agent, for all decisions issued during the duration of the emergency. Also, as a reminder, in order to maintain efficiency during these remote meetings, the chairing is limited to 15 minutes unless the chair authorizes additional time after 15 minutes. I will determine if further discussion is required if all topics have been sufficiently covered. The applicants, commissioners, and any public contributing comments are asked to remain focused and concise in their presentations and discussions. Commissioners are expected to have reviewed permit materials prior to the hearing and to contribute to maintaining an efficient discussion. Additionally, after the applicant's presentation, the chair will request the agent provide a brief summary of the staff report so the commission is aware of the issues identified by the agent to help focus our discussion. As a reminder, any materials a commission applicant or member of the public presents during the public hearing that is not already part of the permit records should be provided by email to the principal clerk and agent following the meeting so it can be retained as part of the public record. Lastly, to establish a quorum, we're going to do a roll call so we can identify members of the commission. Rory Caulfield's here.
And Carol, present.
Carol Lundeen here.
Mike Spadio here.
Okay, so we have a quorum, and so we're going to proceed. First up is a discussion with Greg Swan, who's the assistant town engineer. He's going to do a presentation for us on MS4.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Greg.
How's everybody doing tonight?
Great. How are you?
Good. So I'm here again. It's my annual check-in with the community to talk about our MS4 permit. And for those of you who don't remember, the MS4 permit, or the Municipal Separate Storm System Stormwater Sewer permit, is, so yes, I do know what it means.
You're close.
It's what is it, Jen, exactly? Because I'm not reading it.
No, you're good. You're close.
Okay. It's one of the requirements that we have to do is I have to check in with the community every year to just let you know what we're doing. We're in year 3 of our 5-year permit. The permit is what allows the town of Easton to discharge our stormwater to the waters of the United States. Easton is located in Bristol County and is part of the Taunton River watershed up here at the headwaters. While the town of Easton, we don't have any locally impaired waters that require require monitoring. We are at the headwaters of the Taunton River watershed, which discharges into the Long Island Sound, which in and itself has a nitrogen and pathogen restriction. So that means we have to monitor for that kind of stuff. And that's something I'll get into in a little bit. But the town, we monitor, the Easton DPW has nearly 60 miles of drainage pipe, 1,100 drainage structures between catch basins and manholes, 2,400 catch basins and 400 known discharge points. And that's just what we know of. We're constantly going through all of our records and our plans and updating as necessary, especially with new construction, these numbers change. So what does the permit make us do? There's 6 components to it, and each year you have to address one piece of each component. There's always a public education and outreach section, the engagement where we have to meet with the public and get any feedback, which is what we're doing here tonight. We have to locate and eliminate any illicit sanitary connections. The good news is with that is our sewer system is brand new in town, so we don't have any of those. We've seen all of the connections made. We know where everything is, so that makes that a little bit easier. That's more for older town, the cities in the Commonwealth that have had sewer systems dating back to the 1700s, 1800s, so we can locate all that stuff. Ensure that anything new that we put in or redevelop is properly designed and installed to meet with the new standards. Make sure that while these construction projects are going on, that we're not polluting anything with sedimentation or runoff, which Jen does an excellent job with. And then making sure we're doing the best things possible with best management practices that are the most effective. We are currently in our third permit, where we have just started our fourth permit year on July 1st. I'll be talking about that a little bit later, but I'm going to be commenting on what we've done for the past year, from 2020 to July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021. As always, we have a public outreach section. We are part of the Think Blue campaign through the Sarsage communities. They put out a foul water message on social media every year, just reminding the residents that whatever they put on the ground in their driveway will make it in. If you haven't checked out the Think Blue Massachusetts or gone to YouTube and search for foul water, I recommend you do so. It's a minute and a half, nice little video, just explaining what we're trying to do. And because we are under nitrogen and pathogen impairment, we're required to put out messaging for proper yard waste disposal, picking up after your pets, and proper disposal of leaf litter, and making sure we're taking care of our septic fields. These seem like minor issues, but when you add them all up, it does make a difference to what we discharge, and every little bit helps. So tonight is our annual public participation. So if anybody has any questions at the end of the night, I'll be happy to address those or answer those at that time. Also, one of the things that I'm most proud of that we do here in Easton is we have hazardous waste day. So things that could be dumped down the drain and end up in our water systems. We have a one day a year, usually in April or May, where Clean Harbors comes in and will properly take anything you have that's chemical that you don't know what to do with, gas, oil, chemicals, fertilizer, anything you don't know what to do with, they will properly dispose of it. And it's very, very popular. We often get 500 to 600 cars a year, and every little bit helps. So that's a big component to making sure we don't get anything into the water system, into the stormwater system that doesn't belong there. Our third control measure is illicit discharge and detection. This was a big section of what we've been doing for the past year. Is we've been monitoring all of our outfalls. There are over 400 outfalls in town. The town of Easton is in charge of almost 340 of them, and we've inspected 300 of them for dry weather flow. Dry weather flow is any period after 24 hours since it hasn't rained. So we wouldn't go out today and check these outfalls. When the rain ends, you wait 24 hours, and we go out and start looking for discharge from these connections. They shouldn't be flowing after 24 hours of rainfall. So then we say, okay, there's something not right here. So we've been sampling them, and 31 outfalls showed dry weather flow, and 7, we've been testing for ammonia conductivity, which will tell you how much heavy metals is in a particular water supply. Surfactants is a component of detergents. We've been looking at pH level and potassium totals. We tested 31 outfalls so far. We still have 20 to go. We are behind on that thanks to COVID. I'm not blaming it. We should have had it done, but that's why we haven't finished it. We've had 7 hits in town, all for surfactants. And what they do is it's an agent found in the detergent that helps you clean your pots and pans. But mostly it gets into the groundwater, it gets into the stormwater system when people are washing their car in their driveway. People are washing their car in their driveway with soap. The soap runs down to the gutter gets into the catch basin and ends up in our water. The problem with that, it can be toxic to aquatic organisms. It may have, they're persistent in the environment and may have byproducts that are, not good to your health. So we recommend that you wash your car on your lawn, not on your driveway. So everything goes into the grass and gets perked out, gets separated through the soils. And we also ask that you use low phosphorus biodegradable soaps. And if anybody has any question on where to get those, I'll be happy to answer any emails about that. So that was the big one. And this is good for us to know because this will allow us in years 4 and 5 of the permit to be able to target our message. So now we know what's wrong, what we're discharging, and we can target cleaning this up. But a lot of the dry weather flow that we got is from, we have just an aged infrastructure. There are leaky catch basins. We have a lot of groundwater in town, as I'm sure everybody knows. So this is what we've done for the year. We put out all our annual notifications. We've updated, the big one was in May of this year at annual town meeting. We updated all of our bylaws with respect to the NIPDES permit. The NIPDES permit, the MS4 permit had a series of requirements that we had to put forth for making sure we're compliant with regulatory standards. For example, if you're going to have a lot that has 40,000 square feet of clearing, you need to put erosion controls up. In Easton, a majority of those were already taken care of because they had to come before Concom and it was taken care of under the stormwater management plans. But there were a couple that were slipping through that might not be required to do so. So that's now in the bylaws. And there was also some design standards for nitrogen removal. They're all in the annual town meeting article. And I can get a link to the bylaw as long as it's been updated. I'll have to check on that. And again, a lot of the maintenance that we do, you know, we sweep our streets twice a year. We inspected and cleaned 264 catch basins. The Board of Health does a great job with pushing out messaging on how to take care of your septic system. And Jen, Concom has inspected, reviewed 121 site plans, completed 181 site inspections, issued 4 enforceable actions to make sure everything's up to code. Jen, I'm gonna go on out on the limb and say a lot of that is probably just erosion control, making sure they're doing what they're supposed to do, making sure people are cleaning up after themselves. Nothing major, just making sure sediment doesn't end up in the water system. Is that correct?
I think so. I'm just going by
what
the
Andrea had.
that Andrea had left.
So we conducted 3 inspections of the DPW yard and communicated to the Buildings and Grounds Director to make sure we just close the dumpster lids before storms. That's a big one, is if you leave your dumpster lid open, so if it's raining like right now, the rainwater is getting to the bottom of that dumpster and anything in that dumpster is leaching out onto your pavement, getting into the catch basins and into the water system. I'll be pushing that message out to everybody in town. So please, you know, real basic stuff. Make sure everything's safe and secure, making sure you're not having any, make sure your dirt piles are covered, your salt piles are covered, trying to keep it as clean as possible. It's a lot of common sense stuff that we have to deal with. We have a pretty clean town. We don't have much to worry about. We're not in the Charles River watershed where they have a phosphorus problem and that they're having to deal with right now. We do have some more sampling to do, but I don't expect to see too many hits on that. We've been doing nitrogen sampling for the past year, and that's coming back with some very good results. And I'll be talking more about that next year about what we found. And that's pretty much it for year 3. By the end of year 4, there are certain requirements that we have to adopt from the permit. I'll be reporting on that. We have to identify and report on the top 5 permittee-owned sites to be retrofitted with stormwater improvements. It could be as simple as catch basins, leaching galleys, something to collect sediment before it ends up in the system. And there could be some more, not complicated ones, but more common sense ideas. But if anybody has any ideas or areas that they'd like to see us look at, we can definitely go out and take a look and put it on our list. We have to publish a nitrogen and pathogen identification report. It's going to be just a report saying, these are the areas that generate nitrogen and pathogens, and this is how we're going to deal with it. And then we have 2 years worth of educational message to distribute to residents, commercial and industrial owners. And I have some other ideas along with that, but I'll be talking about that next year with the Conservation Committee and any public, anybody in the public who'd like to talk about it, about how in Easton we can do a better job of keeping our stormwater clean. And that's it. It's been a busy year. It kind of boils down to a couple of bullet points. I don't want to bore anybody with details unless they want to know about them. But that's what we've been working on, and that's what we'll be working on for the next couple of years. And at this time, I'll take any questions anybody has.
So I'd like to just start off with a couple things. One is thank you for your dedication to doing this, Greg. And I know you're this is one of your 1,000 things that you have to do during a year. So I do appreciate your commitment to it. And I understand that the overall impact to not just the town of Easton, but the entire watershed area, as well as, the water that actually makes it into the ocean as well. So this is a big impact thing that little things we can do on a local level that can have a big impact down the line. So I do appreciate it. Just a couple of comments here, and I may have mentioned it to you last time, and I'm not exactly sure. The last year has sort of been a blur to me. But the Green Communities Committee is very focused in on water quality. And so a lot of what you've been talking about here is part of educational messages, is something that they've been focusing in on. I'm not part of the Green Communities Committee, but I've had some interactions with them about some of this particular activity. So as far as engaging the public, they've been very much involved in public engagement and education, and they may be a great resource for you, is what I'm trying to say.
That would be outstanding. Anything we can do to show DEP and EPA what we're doing in town, again, every little bit helps.
They really have some very committed folks on that committee and volunteers. So if you reached out to the chair of that committee, you'd get some engagement. She'd probably want you to show up and talk to them for 15 minutes one week, but
that won't be a problem.
It would be worth your effort. I'm just telling you. So.
Oh no, that's great. And especially we're at a point now. If I had done it in the past 3 years, I would say I need help with something, but I don't know what I need help with. Yeah. Now I do. Now we we know where to target our messaging, and
perfect.
We have to communicate and educate the public with.
They'd be an incredible resource for you. I'm just telling you, they are very committed to this. So, and if you need help getting in touch with the chair, I'm sure you can find her. She's very engaged. So, the second thing is just an educational thing for you to sort of speak about with Clean Harbors, the next Hazardous Waste Day. And I reached out to the select board after the Hazardous Waste Day in April or May of this year. I had personal trouble having them take my filters from my water filter system that I have in my house that removes PFAS. And so I wasn't about to dump those in my trash that would eventually make it back into the groundwater. They really had no idea what I was talking about. And so I hope at the next Hazardous Waste Days, they will take now my 2 years worth of filters that I've been using in my house for PFAS. I think that's a big issue for the town.
Well, there's actually, we have good news on that front, is that we are in the process of, how do I put this? We're in the schematic, we're at 50% design documents, soon to be 100% design documents for our PFAS filtration plants. Right. So that is coming. It will be along it takes some time. Unfortunately, everybody needs these filtration tanks, and not everybody makes it. So there's a little bit of supply and demand issue, but we're doing everything we can to expedite this. We understand it's a very important aspect of what we do with our water treatment program, and we are working on that judiciously.
Yeah, absolutely. And those of us homeowners that have taken it into our own hands to have our own drinking water filtered in our own homes, I think we need to have a method for sort of disposing safely of the materials that we're removing. And that's just for you as a DPW, if you can just sort of, your own DPW staff didn't understand the issue that was sort of screening the people as they were coming in. So, I'm sharing that.
I appreciate it.
Feedback. So, does any other commission member have any comments or questions? Carol.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg. Great job. Couple of things. One thing I was thinking about, you're going to laugh out loud, and I don't mean to compete with any fundraisers, but just a little brainstorming. We could have a car wash with the Green Communities Committee and the DPW and wash people's cars for a donation to the food pantry on the lawn of town hall, something like that. Some way to collaborate with people. It's just, you know, it's just an idea to chuck out there and maybe generate some community gathering.
It's not a bad idea to educate the public, and when they ask why we're washing this on, you know, in a closed source like that, explain to them that this is how we prevent detergents from getting into the waterway.
Right.
Good idea.
Just an idea. Another thing I've noticed up at the school complex, Lothrop, with the high school, middle school, elementary schools, and it was very busy up there right now, but there are a couple of big stormwater retention areas that take a long time to drain after it rains. And they're you know, they've come around, evolved to function as vernal pools. So, and they're full of invasive exotic plants. So I wonder if that's something that we could look at.
Sure. Jen, that would be something that you and I can talk about. And I know you've been here, like we talked about it today. One more thing for you to get acclimated to. But whenever you want to go over and take a look at the, are we talking about the ones right next to RO and right next to the new elementary school construction?
I have two in mind. I couldn't orient you to them. One is on a paved path that will become a road during construction.
Okay.
It's right across kind of from the fire station.
Nope, that's exactly the one I'm thinking of.
Yep. There's that one, and there's another one. I'm not sure where it is, but it's on the school's complex.
Okay. If you want to give me a diagram or send it to me or send it to Jen, and then we can have a site meeting, Jen and I can go out and just take a walk around and see what needs to be done and come up with some asset management plans to figure out how we're going to combat this issue and get everything cleaned up.
Great. Thank you.
Of course.
One more thing is, do you think one hazmat day a year is enough? You said you have 500 people coming.
We actually, they start lining up at 7 o'clock in the morning for this. It goes from 8 to 12 o'clock. It's very well publicized. We also do it with roadside cleanup day. We distribute bags. People go out, they clean the litter from their neighborhood, and we drive around and pick up the bags. People know how to pick up the litter. We don't usually turn people away. It's not like we're shutting the gate at 12 o'clock and telling people no, they can't come in. It's very well attended, and people know at this point, it's not just chemicals they save. They also save their shred documents. We have a shred truck that comes in. We have a bulk day. The Easton Lions are there to take, for a small donation, they'll take your bulk waste away and they'll dispose of it for you. They'll take your tires. They'll take your old oil. We have an oil burner. Propane tanks, and those are the ones I can think of off the top of my head that we can, help you it helps us keep Easton clean.
Right.
Go ahead, Rory, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so if I can just help Commissioner Lundin here, I think that maybe her point was that could we use a second one in the fall as opposed to just one in the spring?
I can ask about that. So we get funding for that, and I don't know if we can get additional funding for the second day.
Right.
Okay. It's unfortunately these things require a little bit of monetary energy to facilitate. So we do one, and it's very successful. And I understand what what Carol is saying, but it's I can always ask. I can't promise anything, but I can definitely make the ask.
Great, thank you.
Any other commissioners have a question before I turn it over to public?
No question from me, but thank you for coming out. It was a great presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
Done for me, and thanks, Greg. Awesome presentation.
Thank you.
Any public comment for on the MS4 presentation from Greg Swan? Just raise your hand or put something in the chat. Okay, Carol.
Right, sorry, I have something that's not on the agenda.
Related to this?
Afterwards. It has to do with the DPW, but it's not in the agenda.
Okay, so we'll we'll take that later. Okay, Greg, I think that's it. So I do appreciate it. And if you ever need anything from us, you know where we are.
Of course. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so next up is a 108 Blackbrook Road. This is a request for determination of applicability for a shed relocation. And I think we have the applicant, Carolyn Pomeroy. So I assume that's Carolyn there. So we will elevate her. Carolyn, you can turn on your video and unmute yourself. We can talk about your project. There you are.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good to see all of you. Thank you for your time.
So once you, I'm going to bring up the plans here if you, so I can help you out a little bit.
Sure.
Maybe this time I can actually get the right screen here. Okay. I assume you guys can see the plan.
Yes.
Okay, so so this is your property, and best I can tell, you just had did you just purchase this property?
We purchased it 3 years ago.
Right, and so there was a septic system put in on this property just recently. So we're using the
Right.
plans there.
Yep, those are these plans here.
Okay, so just tell us what you want to do here.
So when we purchased the property, there was a shed kind of on the side of the yard that has rotted and needed to be removed. So we're looking to replace the shed and relocate it to the back of the property. So it'd be in the existing lawn area, both the 8x10 shed and its concrete pad, and it would be 5 feet from the conservation marker that's currently there.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Oh, hang on a second. Before I do that, thank you. I think that's all the details I need here. So
okay,
8x10 shed.
Yep.
Jennifer, you want to give us your sort of a summary of your report?
Yeah, the whole lawn is already stabilized. There's already markers with the medallions or posts with the medallions. She's just moving a shed from one spot in the lawn to another. It's exempt under Mass Wetland Protection Act, so it would be a -5, and under the town's bylaw, it would also be a -2. So Carolyn, negative means it does not need a notice of intent permit. That's actually the good answer.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So any questions from the commission? Carol?
Yeah.
Thank you. It's the shed, you want to put it, it's an existing lawn, but it's still close to the wet. How far is it from the wetland or buffer or what have you?
5 feet.
From the wetland?
From the, no, it's 5 feet from the marker. It's probably about 10 feet from the wetland.
Okay. So what I wonder is it ridiculous to request some stormwater management in the way of gutters and, facing the downspouts away so that it takes longer for that stormwater to go downhill?
It's a pretty flat site, and there's not, an 8x10 shed isn't going to generate a lot of stormwater, and it's not going to create a channel. It's just going to percolate right into the grass. So, I wouldn't think that would be necessary.
Okay, just ask him, just an idea. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ben?
My question, and this may have been in the documents, I apologize, was what was the old shed built on? Was there a concrete slab there?
It was just sitting on bricks.
Okay. And will you be removing those bricks as well?
Yes.
Okay. That satisfies me. Thank you.
Okay, so any other comments from the commission? Any public comment for 108 Blackbrook Road? Okay, so seeing none, Carolyn, I assume you want to close the hearing?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to close the hearing and issue a negative determination of applicability, -5 for the state, -2 for Easton.
Spady second.
Spady with the second. Roll call vote, Caulfield's aye.
Arrow I.
Lundin, aye.
Spady aye.
Okay,
Thank you, Carolyn.
All right. Thank you for your time. Have a good
thank
night.
you very much.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so next up is 83 Depot Street. This is a notice of intent for a barn installation. Just as a note of clarification here, we all these new hearings all have their butters notifications on file. So I just want to put that on record because I always forget to do it at each hearing. So I will try and do it here. So 83 Depot Street, and we need to bring up Frank Reiblin, and also I think the applicants are here as well. So they should be coming up shortly. Okay, well, I have tried to promote Frank twice. I think he has to accept it when it comes up. Jen or Tish, can you try for me, please?
Looks like Tish is actually having some issues. So yeah, let me give that a try.
Yeah, I got booted for about 10 seconds during our first presentation. Came back in pretty quickly, but I'm wondering if something's going on.
I've hit it twice, so I don't.
There he is.
All right. Okay, Frank, you can unmute yourself, turn your video on. I hope.
I don't see him as a panelist anymore.
He's still on mine as a panelist.
I don't see him as anything anymore. Oh, there he is.
It looks like Tish's whole screen has gone black, so she can't even change who the host is and then sign back in. So it may have something to do with that, but that's just a guess.
Were you also the host for this meeting?
Yeah, I'm a co-host, so is Jennifer. So
got it.
We should be okay. So even if we lost Tish, we should be.
I mean, Frank can try calling in.
Frank, the number is at the top of the agenda, and then you just have to put in the meeting ID as once you connect, and then we can see you as a. There's somebody who's called in. Maybe that's him. Huh? Or somebody else who connected and been disconnected. I don't have Frank's number. Does anybody have Frank's number?
No. Is he able to put notes in the chat? Not that you're going to do the whole presentation by chat, but can you, Frank, maybe just try to put something in the chat so we know you can communicate?
A new phone number just joined us as an attendee.
Okay.
Maybe see if that's him.
I think that. Okay, so they're unmuted. Is that you, Frank?
Yes, it is. I've got some funny blocks on my screen. I really can't see too much of what's going on. That's why I tried to call in.
No, you absolutely appreciate it, Frank. We've got your plan up on the screen right now. The applicants are also here with us, John and Jennifer DeRosa. So we're happy to have you make your presentation verbally if you want, and answer whatever questions we have. I'm sure you're more than capable of persevering through this.
So Rory, I don't see the plan.
Oh, hang on.
Yeah.
Let me try this again then. I must have stopped the share. Thank you, Jennifer.
Mm-hmm. There we go.
So there's the plan.
Okay. Basically, Mr. DeRose would like to construct a barn for horses. Before I get into some of the technical presentation of the meeting, I'd like for him to be able to introduce himself and explain a little bit of the purpose of this barn and what some of his goals are. Then I can go back with some of the other items that you may wish to speak with.
Yeah, just for the record, on the phone is Frank Reiblin, professional or civil engineer. I don't even know, professional surveyor. I don't even know what your title is, Frank, anymore.
The land surveyor, professional land surveyor.
Professional land surveyor from Reiblin Land Surveyors. So Jennifer and John DeRosa, if you just want to introduce yourselves and give us your name and address, and then you can give us a little speech.
Well, first of all, can you hear me okay?
Yep,
yes.
No problem.
Okay, my name is John DeRosa. I'm with my sister Jennifer here. Okay. Frank is definitely going to handle the technical aspects of this for me. But just to give you a quick rundown on the project, this is a barn for my mother's horses. We're in the midst of a in-law addition project right now. My father did pass away just about 2 years ago. My mother lives on the other side of Easton. She's lived there for about 50 years. It's time to get her over here, and she's not leaving without her horses. So that's where this project comes in. It's a good sized piece of property. I think we have all the room in the world to put this barn in. We just want to keep it as far away from the street as possible for the safety of the animals. And that's where we're encroaching a little close to the conservation area. So I guess that's why we're here.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Jennifer, do you want to add anything? Are we good?
In a nutshell, my mother's property's become a little bit too much for her to take care of. She's had horses on that property for 50 years, never had a problem. They're what she lives for, so we got to find a way to do this. And again, like John said, we just want to keep the barn as far away from the street as possible. So we feel this is a good spot for it. So hopefully you agree. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Frank, you're up.
Okay. The barn is going to sit just inside of the 200-foot riverfront area. It is entirely outside of the 100-foot buffers from the vegetated wetlands and the 100-foot buffer from the floodplain under the Easton bylaw. The ground where the barn is to be constructed is relatively level. We are not anticipating any grade changes, any significant grade changes whatsoever, certainly less than a foot. The barn will be sitting basically on the existing soil. We have outlined around the barn our typical siltation control or sediment control measures with the filter mitt socks. The barn will be connected by fencing to the area behind. There's already some existing fencing behind there. We're just going to connect up to it. Again, it is an area that's been disturbed and used as a lawn and other activities for many decades. I think the agent even pointed out that according to Google Earth, they can see that the area was cleared prior to the enactment of the Rivers Protection Act. I really do not anticipate any disturbance of any of the wetland resource areas with this. The closest abutter to the proposed barn is the property at 77 Depot Street, which is also owned by Mr. DeRosa. So the only abutter that may be affected is himself.
Okay. Anything else we need to know, Frank?
Nothing significant. We have proposed to put in the standard wetland conservation markers back at the limit of the existing lawn area. And this is a very well-maintained lawn and very nicely landscaped back there. It looks kind of a beautiful area.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful right up to the brook for sure.
It is. I did want to point out the bridge that crosses the brook. When I first saw the bridge, I says, "Uh-oh, somebody put a new bridge across here." Until I realized that it's simply new decking on the bridge. The understructure is quite old. It's been there for decades, and apparently the boards were deteriorating and had to be replaced.
Well, Frank, you anticipated the question, so thank you very much. Because definitely, when I was out there, I said, that looks like a new bridge. So I do appreciate you clarifying on that. So Jennifer, you want to give us the rundown here?
Sure. The wetland boundary, wetland resource areas we verified at the last meeting. So those are accurate. You know, like we mentioned before, the clearing up to the river predates the Rivers Act, so there's no violation there. I think we may just need to have the riverfront fee paid if that hasn't been done already. We did have one question about where manure would be stockpiled. And I know Frank said it would probably be removed off-site, but in the meantime, we just need to know where you plan on stockpiling that.
Taking the questions in order regarding the fee, we have paid all the fees that were requested by the app. This obviously was filed through the town's app Permitize, and that app calculates the fees. All fees were paid, and as of 6 o'clock this afternoon, I checked on the app, and it was showing at that time that there was nothing payable. So I'm not really familiar with what the agent is requesting on additional funds. I know that Mr. DeRosa has at this time spent a considerable amount of money with this application for both the prior application to get the wetland line accepted through the ANRAD process and now through this application. So I'm not really certain what additional fees are being requested.
So on the state form, if you're in the riverfront area, the total fee is multiplied by 1.5. So we'll just double check that in your application. And if it hasn't been paid, that 1.5 riverfront area multiplier, then we can add that as a condition.
Okay. And going back to the manure, I have been told that it is to be carried off-site to be composted on another site in town. I think Mr. DeRosa is better qualified to give the commission additional details on that.
Yep, if I may, we do haul all the manure up to a compost facility, one of the local farms, Clover Valley Farm. I own a dump trailer, it's called, and nothing is stored on the ground. It goes right in the dump trailer and up to the compost site.
And we do that every day. We don't have a manure pile. We never have a manure pile on our existing property where we keep the horses now, and we don't plan to. Very clean property that we have now, so. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. You answered the question. You're going to remove it every day, not ever having owned a horse. Not sure how that worked, but thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, so the only other question that I have here is related to the addition that's going in right now, which is inside the 200-foot riverfront area. And I don't recall that there's an existing permit for that particular addition. Is there a conservation permit for that addition?
Conservation signed up on our permit for that, yes.
Signed off on it. Mm-hmm. Look, we applied for a permit with the building department, and all the agencies signed off on the permit.
Okay. And I know that we would all have to do so. So so
we had to get a permit for an in-law addition. So we did go.
Yeah, and I know that all the departments actually sort of review all the permits that come in through the building department and say, yes, there's no issue, or it has to come before us, or whatever. So, but that isn't a notice of intent permit. So I think that for safety's sake, and I really don't think, I think it's more of a housekeeping issue at this point, since you already have a notice of intent here for this barn, that if I don't think it's going to cause any hardship on your part for us to roll this addition into this notice of intent. Okay, so it shouldn't, the permit price doesn't go up, the cost doesn't go up. Frank has already done the plans, so all the money you need to spend to do that. I think we're just going to include the notice of intent and include the addition into your permit, so that anybody has any questions about it, it's been permitted. Okay, so it's a matter of us sort of watching out for you at this point, so that somebody can't sit there and say, oh, that addition went in unpermitted, now you've got to do something else. Let us take care of it right now, and as long as we've got adequate erosion control here, and sedimentation control, there's not going to be any issue. That's the only thing. You might have to put in another set of, sedimentation control or something. That's about it to me.
Okay. So. Okay, great. Does that sound okay to you, Frank?
I think that's a very good idea. That saves you any problems in the future as far as having something that was constructed without all possible permits, and it also protects the commission against anyone saying that they set back and allowed an addition to go through without the proper permits issued. So I think it's a win for everyone.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you.
We understand. Very good.
Okay, so any other questions from the commission? Carol?
Thank you. This is a really, really, really heartwarming family story about moving mom over with her horses. It's really, really, I totally get it. And at the same time, so I want to find out more about the horse waste, the manure. So you're planning on scooping out the barn every day and taking that on your dump trailer. What about the paddock area?
That we scoop out every day as well. I come home from work and get out there with a pitchfork, and anything that's out there, we either throw into barrels that we then put on the trailer, or we put it directly on the trailer and shoot it up to the farm.
Right. And you do that in the winter too?
We do.
Believe it or not, this is my mother's life. She's retired. She's actually the former animal control officer in town. And this is what she does. And this is what we do. We clean the horses. It's our hobby. So,
yeah, right. I get that. And I guess one of my concerns is that a future owner of this property, you know, sometime down the road who would, you know, after, you know, for whatever reasons you may not want to be there anymore, a future owner may not have those same practices as you. So when we're looking at, you know, when you look at the UN climate change reports, it's pretty staggering to look at what could be true in 2050, which is now less than 30 years away. So I would be a lot more comfortable if some kind of, I've seen this in Taunton. There's a woman that I know who has horses, and her Concom has, or is it the state or some combination, has had her install some kind of concrete holding area for the manure. That way it doesn't wash away. It's, you know, in those times when it just can't be done every day, maybe by future owners, there's at least a place to put it. And so I would feel a lot more comfortable about that. Because
so I think the applicant's actually taking it a step further than that. I mean, they're talking about, you know, committing to cleaning it up and putting it in barrels or into the trailer itself, which I don't think is any different than sort of moving it to a concrete structure where it can't wash away. So, I mean, from my perspective, I'm, you know, very pleased with the actions that the applicant is proposing for the manure maintenance on this property. It's much more than I expected was going to be offered, to be honest.
Right.
And had they not had a specific method that they'd already been using for many, many years, I would have suggested, yes, you need to have some manure holding material that is going to prevent this from being washed down, you know, downstream into this brook. So, but personally, I'm okay with what's being proposed, but I'm happy. I'm open to hearing from other commission members.
Right. My point, Mr. Chair, is that future owners may not have the same practices of cleaning out the barn and the paddock every day. That's my concern, because none of us hopefully will be here when that time comes around. So I'd like to see something in place now while the permit is, you know, before us.
Okay.
Another concern that I have is, Frank, I was reading your alternatives piece. Alternative number one, the placement of the barn nearer to Depot Street, south of the riverfront area, was considered. This would place, it says Bard, but I'll say it as barn, directly between the existing homes at 77 and 83 Depot Street. It would also place the barn near the street, resulting in an unsightly addition to the neighborhood, stress on the animals due to the increased noise levels. So, just on the very first level, what you're kind of saying is that the applicants are planning to put in an unsightly barn, which I don't think that's what you meant, but that's kind of what you said. And the Conservation Commission is not the unsightly barn police. So I don't see that as an argument for putting it, you know, between those homes. Besides which, one of those homes, you said the abutter is the applicant. So I'm just not buying that argument for your alternative number one.
Well, regarding that, you are correct when you're saying that the abutter is the applicant. However, going back to your previous comments, that the applicant may not always own the property, the applicant may wish to sell the property at 77 Depot Street. And again, the barn being right at it would may be detrimental to it. But one of the bigger problems too is the stress on the animals with all of the extra noise and traffic from Depot Street. The closer you get it to the street, the more stress it's going to put on the horses. And as far as the unsightliness of the barn, I don't think anyone would consider anything on the property of Mr. DeRosa's to be really unsightly. If you've walked the property and looked at it, you'll see that he does have a very, very neatly maintained property. I don't think there's any question that it's going to be a nice looking barn and a nice addition to the neighborhood. It's just that a barn is not something that you would normally put really close to a busy street.
Right, understood. It's just, I just found the way that you wrote that, you know, suggested an unsightly structure was going on. That's your own language. So I'm glad to hear that the applicants have a fine looking property, and I assume that they would put in a fine rather than an unsightly looking barn.
Anything else?
No, thank you.
Ben or Mike?
I'm all set, thank you.
Any public comment for 83 Depot Street? Just raise your hand or put something in the chat. Okay, so seeing none here. There's a couple of issues left here. One is we don't have a DEP number, correct?
We do. We just got it today.
Okay, so we did get the DEP number today. Great. So that helps us.
1710.
Okay, 1710. Great. So that's one issue. The second issue is that there is this issue of stormwater management off the side of the drive. It's a potential area of concern. And there was a suggestion that we add a swale or some sort of stormwater retention device in that area. Are there any discussions, thoughts around that particular issue?
Well, again, the drive would be in front of the barn, and that really is outside the 200-foot riverfront buffer. It's going from Mr. DeRosa's property to Mr. DeRosa's property. I really don't see that there's a significant issue or concern with that.
So Jennifer, can you just clarify, is the area within jurisdiction, or is it just the driveway in general?
Frank is right, it would be outside jurisdiction.
Okay. So, okay, so I'm gonna leave that issue as is, I guess, other than the fact that I would make the suggestion to Mr. DeRosa that he would want to have continue to have his home and area on, as nice looking as it currently is, and it is a beautiful home. So
thank you.
So I do appreciate that. So from my perspective, I find that the manure plan, the manure control plan, is sufficient for the permit. I think that I understand Commissioner Lundine's concern about future owners, but I'm also concerned about increasing disturbance and impervious into the additional area, into the paddock area that's unnecessary at this time. So that's my concern. The other issue here is that we need to, can you suggest some language to me, Jennifer, for increasing sedimentation control here behind the addition?
I'm not really sure that's needed. It's just such a long stretch, and it doesn't appear to have any issues at the site inspection.
I agree with that. I was there, and it's well under control for sure. Okay, so we'll leave it as is. Any other comments before we close the hearing, or ask the applicant if he wants to close the hearing?
Frank. So Frank. All right, we would ask to close the hearing. Thank you for your time.
Okay. So I'm going to make a motion to close the hearing and issue a permit for work and order conditions, noting the condition that if the applicant has state fees that are unpaid, that those get paid in a timely manner.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Anything else I need, Jennifer?
No, we can add the condition that talks about removing the manure every day, if that makes people feel comfortable.
Yep,
That's
that would be
what they're
good.
already planning to do.
Yep, sure. So additionally, manure will be removed on a daily basis and placed into a trailer or other impermeable container to be taken off site on a regular basis to another site in town.
Perfect. Yes.
Great. Excellent. Yep.
May I ask, would that be, so there's no stockpiling on the ground?
No. We literally don't like it hanging around. We do our best to remove it every day. I mean, granted, if it snows 6 feet, maybe we let it go 2 days, but
the every day isn't a hard heart, but it's every other day. Yeah.
So what about no stockpiling on the ground?
Nothing goes on the ground.
But I'm asking.
I think that, okay, so are you suggest, so what's in front of us is a motion. Okay, so I can discuss the motion, we can amend the motion, we can do anything else. If you have a point of information, I think that's what it was right now. So point of information, I believe that the motion that I made it clear that it was not to be stockpiled on the ground. It was either to be put into the trailer or other impermeable container, such as plastic barrels that they were talking about, that then would be moved to the trailer. So I believe that I covered all of that, not stockpiling on the ground. I don't think I need to say not stockpiling on the ground because I specifically said what they needed to do. If you want to make an amendment, we can vote on the amendment.
Would I do that now?
You can make a motion to make an amendment, yes.
Okay, I move to make an amendment to the condition regarding the manure management to explicitly say there shall be no stockpiling of manure on the ground.
Okay, do I have a second for that amendment? There's no second. What's that?
I'll second that, because I mean, they did say every other day, and they were saying before it was every day. So that's a little concerning to me. That's making me feel like it's not every other day. So you kind of kill my confidence there.
Okay, so I'm happy to discuss the amendment. I think that cleaning up the manure every other day is not stockpiling it on the property. So that's my assessment of that. Any other comments?
I think the original motion addressed that there wouldn't be stockpiling of manure on the ground. But I mean, I don't think it hurts to have it. I think it just is unnecessary.
I just don't want it on the ground. I think that's a fair thing to say.
I agree. I agree 100% that it shouldn't be on the ground, but I believe that the original motion addressed that. So, any other discussion about the amendment?
And that would be in perpetuity for all future owners.
Permanent, perpetual condition. Okay, seeing no further discussion about the amendment, we'll take a roll call vote on the amendment. Caulfield's nay.
Carroll, nay.
Lundin, aye.
Spady, aye.
Okay, so the amendment fails at 2-2, fails to pass. So we're back to the original motion with the condition about manure maintenance and paying the fees. Any other discussion about the motion?
I don't believe it was seconded. Carroll second.
Carroll seconds the motion. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, Caulfield's aye.
Carroll, aye.
Lundin, abstain.
Spady, aye.
Okay, so the motion passes 3-0-1.
Thank you. Thank you, Frank.
Frank's going to stay with us.
Oh, Frank. Well, we can still thank him for that presentation.
Yes, exactly.
Anyway.
Thank you, Frank. And thank you, Jennifer and John. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
very
Thank
much.
you all very much. Appreciate it.
Just 1 second here before we go on. Jennifer, we need to include something specifically about the addition?
Yeah, I'm just going to write it in there.
Okay.
It's all good.
It's on the plan. It's on the plan, so we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so next up is 170 Chestnut Street. This is an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation. Frank, I know the applicant is here. Do I need to bring them up?
In all likelihood, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if the applicant wishes to verbally participate, but I think it might be wise to at least have that ability for them.
Okay, great. I'm promoting Arlene Keach. Is there anybody else on your side of things, Frank?
I do not believe there's anyone else in attendance this evening.
Okay, great. Okay, so once you, I have your plans up, I think. Somebody just confirmed that no, they're gone, so let me put them back up. So you should be able to see it now.
Yes.
I do not have video connection with you. I don't know what's going on with the system tonight, but that's quite all right. I'll carry on by telephone. I have my plans in front of me here.
Yeah, so we have sheet 2 of 2 is the first sheet for some reason, but I can go whichever one first. You tell me.
Okay, well, let me open up sheet 2 of 2 then. I had sheet 1 of 2. Briefly, this area, it's a large acreage parcel of land that the Keaches have owned for many years. I'm sure most of you that have been in town for a while were aware of John Keach, and this is actually part of the property that was at the back end of the Easton Country Estates subdivision that went in town back in the late 80s, early 90s. Ms. Keach is now looking at the property as to what she may be able to do with it. It is an obvious asset to her, but the amount of asset is going to depend upon the amount of upland area that she has on the land. And that's what we're here in front of the commission to determine. As I said, it is a large acreage parcel. The wetlands have been delineated in the field by Dr. Deshang Wang, and he was out there numerous times to cover this entire site, starting back in August of 2018 and completing in January of this year. The survey was conducted during the various times that he was on site. We do have the plans prepared showing the wetland lines as delineated. We noted on the plans that there is a stream present that has not been located, and we are not asking at this time the commission to rule on the location of the stream in the town's riverfront area. Dr. Wang noted in his report that the stream would be determined by the bank, which would be survey located. That would be at a later date. Right now, the only thing we have asked for is just where are the wetlands, how much upland do we have, and we can analyze the potential of what may or may not be done with the upland area once we have that information. I know that the agent has requested that we present a topographic survey to the commission to go along with this. We are asking for a waiver from that requirement due to the extreme expense. That's going to be quite an expensive survey to do that for the entire site. We feel that Dr. Wang was able to physically visit the site and determine the location of the wetlands without having a topographic plan, and he has flagged them. We're requesting that the work that he has done be reviewed and either approved or disapproved. And additionally, Dr. Wang has offered to accompany the agent or consultant, whichever the case may be, in the field to Give him the guided Indian tour. Show him where he has flagged the wetlands and answer any questions regarding the delineation. If there is any need to change it, then it can be changed and the flags would be survey located if necessary.
Okay, so so is there only one potential stream on this property?
Actually, there are two that kind of intersect. One comes out of the there's a pond area that's shown on sheet 2 of 2, which would be the northerly area, very near the northerly property line, right where it says wetland area on the plan. That would be in the flags around the lower B's and the lower C series of flags. That goes around a small pond area. There's a stream that exits from that pond area that goes through a pipe underneath the cart path and flows southerly. There's another rather substantial stream that crosses the cart path further along, and the other stream runs in an east-west direction. It would cross it goes under the cart path in a steel pipe that would be between flags 41, 42 on the west side of the cart path and flags 42, A42, A43 on the east side of the cart path.
Yeah, so so just can the commission see what he's talking about? So on the other sheet, if you can see my cursor, this is where the pond is. And then it comes underneath here, underneath the cart path into here. And you can see that on the next sheet, this actually connects through up here, over here, and the stream continues this way. It is, as he says, there's a steel pipe that it runs underneath that cart path. Is there, okay, so I just sort of wanted to understand that issue. So, anything else, Frank, before I move on to Jennifer?
No, I think I've given you the basic summary of it. Of course, there may be additional questions that I would need to answer that may come up. And as far as questions regarding the specific methodology of the wetland delineations, I would not be capable of answering those. Those would have to be answered by Dr. Wang, and we'd certainly be willing to pass any of those questions on to him.
Okay. Jennifer, can you touch on the requirement here? You're not simply asking for topographics for the sake of asking for it. It's part of what's required as part of the plan details, correct?
Correct.
So where is that noted in our bylaws or our regulations somewhere?
Yes, it is.
What section? So I can just.
It's 503-25B. So that's a requirement for identifying all resource areas shown. And then item 4 is existing contours and elevations. Those are the requirements in your bylaw and the regulations.
And Jen, that's specifically for an ANRAD.
It's for all projects, any plans that are submitted to the commission.
Yeah, this is just under filing requirements, information plan standards and conditions for site inspection. So under plans, which is B, 50325B.
Mm-hmm. You know, part of the requirements here is contours and elevations. All drawings must indicate existing and final contours and contour interval used, including reservoir, lake, pond bottoms. Contour interval should be no greater than 2 feet. I guess sort of my question, Rory, if you don't mind, is just, you know, the applicant isn't really proposing a development. They're just asking for lines to be confirmed by us. And I'm just wondering if there's a way to get it done, maybe without calling it an ANRAD. Just looking at the means used, I don't know.
Jennifer, any thoughts on that?
It doesn't matter which type of permit you're applying for. Your regulations require all resource areas be identified, not just the bordering vegetated wetland, and it requires the elevations.
So the other question here also, Jennifer, was, is there some question whether or not there's potential vernal pools on this property?
The wetland report does list 2 potential vernal pools, but they are not shown on the submitted plans.
So Frank, can you speak to the 2 issues? One is there some regulatory basis for us to accept the plans without contours? I mean, is there some, I mean, if you can point me to one, I'd be happy to look at it and share it with the commission. And the second issue is the rationale for not including potential vernal pools and even the streams for that matter onto this.
Well, again, the streams would be shown with the more detailed survey. We're trying to get the extent of the wetland lines in the upland area approved and located without having to go through the added expense of it. The applicant has already paid just in application fees to the state and town approximately $10,500 at this point. So on this other step is a very substantial expense, and the only thing she's really asking for is the limits of the vegetated wetland. Now, as far as the vernal pools, they are located within the, I said vernal pools, they're actually potential vernal pools. They certainly have not been certified. The first one is the northerly wetland area that we discussed previously. That's on the north side of the cart path right near her northerly property line. It's a little area that I believe that they used to go ice skating on when she had younger children. There was kind of a little play area there, and it's not too far from the existing dwelling that's on the property. The other potential vernal pool would be in the far southwest portion of the property. I'm not that familiar with it. It is back in the wetland somewhat. Dr. Wang did mention that there may be one in there. But again, I have not seen any documentation that would really show exactly where it is.
So doesn't the potential vernal pool impact the what upland area might be available on this property? Not to I mean, isn't that important to understand that?
It does have a 200-foot no disturb zone, and the riverfront to the banks is 200 feet. So those are also areas that you would need in order to come up with any kind of a development plan.
Yeah, that is correct. And again, at this stage, the development plan has not been proposed. We're at a very preliminary stage of looking at the viability of this land. That was why we're taking this step, just to try to get a feel for what was out there with the minimal investment.
So, and by all means, I am not trying to suggest how somebody do their business. Couldn't Dr. Wang have given you that information without actually filing an ANRAD?
I cannot speak to that. That's a question he would have to answer.
Well, I'm just saying this is his information. I mean, certainly someone could have given you some sense of what the upland is without us issuing an ANRAD. Yes, it's not official till we actually approve it, but given his credentials, I would expect that he would have been willing to offer an opinion on what were the potential upland areas in this property, even hazarding a guess at what the riverfront areas were as well. So I'm just suggesting that the fact that you've come before us for an ANRAD on simply the bordering vegetated wetlands when there's at least two other significant resources on the property is a tad concerning to me.
Right.
So the second portion of the question is there some regulatory reference that I can hang my hat on to accept the plan without the contours on it?
Well, my position on that would simply be that the regulation is a town regulation that was instituted by the Conservation Commission, which would mean that the Conservation Commission themselves would have the authority to issue waivers from their own regulations.
I think I'd have to change the regulations in order to be able to issue a waiver to that regulation.
You know, if the commission feels that a topographic survey is required in order to complete their deliberations on this project and confirm the wetlands, and that is something that we would be certainly doing. And that may, it looks like that's what the commission is telling us now, that we need to bring that additional information in.
Well, I think so far, maybe we'll have a sort of little bit of a roundtable discussion on this and see if I'm speaking for the consensus or whether or not there is a different consensus that we might accept the plans without contours. My concern in doing so would be we're setting precedent to do so. And therefore, I don't know the next project that comes before me where I don't want to find this exception to the rule acceptable. Could I be held accountable? Well, you did it on 170 Chestnut in similar situation. What makes it not allowable in this case? That'd be my concern, and that's why I asked for some sort of regulatory basis that I could hang my hat on. I mean, if there was something that said, and then the commission can take any other action, and waive any standard that they want according to their own regulations, then I would say, if it had said that, then I'd say, okay, well, we have the leeway to do that. I don't think our regulations say that, unfortunately. And that's my concern is, I think looking at 50325, I think these are the standards for plans, period. And it doesn't give us a lot of leeway on it. So that's mine. I'm open to, I'd like to have a little bit of a conversation here before we even go to public comment on this amongst the board to see if there is some consensus of whether or not we need the applicant to modify the plans so that we can actually vote on them. Anyone?
I certainly understand the applicant's perspective trying to come and get wetland lines confirmed. But I agree, Rory. I think it's certainly, we couldn't vote on it to be an ANRAD. And I was just curious as to whether or not, as you were, if there's some additional thing that we could call this or do to just confirm the wetland lines and limit it to that, where there is no development proposed here at this time. But I think an ANRAD does require complete delineation and, of course, compliance with the town's rules on that.
Okay. Mike or Carol?
And said it best.
Yep, I agree with Rory and Ben and Mike. That's so
I think it comes back to the issue too is of having two pretty significant, and in fact they may be more significant to you than the bordering vegetated wetlands, to be honest. Resource areas on this property. I think they're going to have a greater impact on your upland area than the bordering vegetated wetlands, as far as the potential vernal pools in the riverfront areas. And and I think that also someone will need to determine whether or not there's an intermittent stream on the southern portion of the property where that cart path crosses that wetland right there. I think that's a potential intermittent stream there as well. To be honest, I mean, it's channeling there. And so I would suggest to you that that could impact your upland areas here, depending on what type of stream that is. So I think that for the benefit of your applicant, and potentially finding out whether or not this is a developable piece of property or how you would go about developing this piece of property. Every piece of property is developable, but how you would go about development on this piece of property, which is, I assume, the decision making that's going on here. I really think you need to determine whether or not the potential vernal pools and the riverfront areas, three distinct ones, need to get on this plan, as well as getting the contours.
Okay.
So I know you're going to have to regroup with your applicant, to be honest. I understand that. I don't expect a decision here, but I think it's probably in the best interest is to continue this, but I'll give you the option to continue or close. I mean, it's your option, but I would strongly
definitely. I do not in any way envision that we are at the point of requesting closure this evening.
Okay.
I would definitely request a continuance of this application.
Okay, so our next meeting is October 18th, but that would mean that you'd have to have plans in front of Jennifer by October 11th.
No, not going to happen.
Right? No, I know. That's why I'm trying. That's why I'm telling you. Yeah.
So we have November 1 and November 15th after that.
Let's go for the November 15th.
Okay, so just before I do this, since in case somebody did actually come to the meeting to give public comment, I do want to give them an opportunity to do so. Any public comment for 170 Chestnut Street? Raise your hand and put something in the chat. Okay, so seeing none, I'm going to make a motion to continue 170 Chestnut to our meeting on November 15th.
Carol, second.
Carol with the second. Roll call vote, Caulfield's aye.
Carol, aye.
Carol?
Unmute.
I was muted. Sorry, Carol, aye.
Lundeen, aye.
Katie, aye.
Okay, so 4-0 to continue. Thank you, Frank and Arlene. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so our next two hearings, as noted on the agenda, have been continued, but let's make votes to continue them. 560 Foundry Street is requested that we continue to October 18th. I make a motion to continue 560 Foundry to October 18th for the applicant's request.
80 seconds.
Spady with the second. Roll call vote, Caulfield's aye.
Carol, aye.
Lundeen, aye.
80 aye.
Thank you. Next up is 58 Mill Street. Again, the applicant has requested continuance to October 18th and make a motion to continue 58 Mill Street to October 18th per the applicant's request.
80 second.
Roll call vote, Caulfield's aye.
Carol, aye.
Lundeen, aye.
80 aye.
Okay, thank you all. Okay, so next up is still got Frank's line open here. So.
I'm still here because
yeah.
I'm on with the.
Okay, so there you go. See, I was thinking I have to put Frank here, but Frank, I actually so next up is 9 Avery Way, I think it's called, not Avery Street. Yeah. Avery Way, which was formerly known as 233 R Lincoln Street. This is a request for certificate of compliance. I do have the plan here, but I don't know if anybody really has any questions about this. We actually talked about this at our last meeting when we granted the extension. So, so I'm suggesting to you, Frank, you just hold quiet for a moment.
Okay.
We can get through this without too much discussion, but I'm happy to have discussion if we need it. So this is just as a point of clarification. This original application is somewhere probably in the neighborhood of 10 years old. and there's superseding orders, and then there's an additional permit related to the driveway, and there's a whole bunch of things related to this. But best I can tell, and I think Jennifer is in concurrence, and I'll let her speak, but I believe that the site is in compliance at this point. We can release a couple of the permits that will be very specific about which ones we can release, because some are state permits. So there's a superseding order at the state that they would actually have to release that permit. So, so Jennifer, did I cover that? How did I do? Okay.
That's it. It's perfect. Ready to go.
Okay. Any questions from the commission on this one? There is a second home on the other side that's a different permit that we're not talking about tonight. Okay, so seeing no questions from anybody, any public comment on 9 Avery Way? Seeing none, I'm going to make a motion to issue a certificate of compliance for 9 Avery Way, specifically permits state permit 152-1460 in Easton 1340 and Easton 784.
80 a second.
Roll call vote. Caulfield's aye.
Carroll, aye.
Lundy and I.
80 aye.
Told you, Frank.
Okay.
Just remember the other ones you have to ask DEP for the certificate of compliance.
You got that, Frank? So the other permits you have to ask DEP for the certificate of compliance because it's their superseding order.
Oh, yes, I believe the applicant's aware of that.
Perfect.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Frank.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Bye-bye. Okay. And I'm going to... Okay, so next up is 51 Arbor Way. This is a request for certificate of compliance. I'm going to bring up a zoo. Okay, so Azu, you're up.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Good evening, Jennifer.
Hello.
How are you?
Good, thanks.
Great. So, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, for the record, my name is Azwe Teniru. I am a registered professional land surveyor and a registered professional civil engineer in Massachusetts. What we have before you is a request for a certificate of compliance for let me see if I can share the file. Do I have the authorization, or Mr. Chairman, you can share the plan?
Yeah, you have authorization to do it, or else I can do it, whichever you prefer.
Okay. Let me see here. This is the order of condition. Okay. Can you see it?
Absolutely, yep.
Okay. So I have also Stanley Chalvier. He's the owner of the house. This house was developed back, I believe, 2004, 2005, on their notice of intent for a single family. There was an order of conditions that had been issued for the overall project. But this particular location also received an order of conditions for the construction of the house, as well as the subsurface sewage disposal system, the water service. As you can see, 90% of the site, as far as the lot development is concerned. Now, this lot is small. However, the reason for that is the overall subdivision was developed as what the town of Easton has under its bylaws, what is called open space residential development. So you have a reduction in lot square footage, but then a lot of open space created around the project. It is really a very good neighborhood. I believe it's one of those things that some developers, out of sight, out of mind, especially when the developer was not the occupant of any of these house lots. So some of the applications fell under the radar, if you will. But if you look at the red line, which defines the 100-foot wetlands buffer, jurisdictional buffer, you can see that the house itself is totally outside the jurisdiction. The septic system is probably about on the northeast corner of the septic system, which will be about a fourth of the septic system is in the buffer zone, but clearly outside the 50-foot no activity buffer. What I pointed out in my letter, which is fairly obvious and that is reflected on the plan, is the fact that if you look at the septic system under Title V, when a portion of a septic disposal field is on their driveway, that leaching field has to be vented. So you can see that the vent pipe, basically an air release pipe, is actually located outside the boundaries of the lot. And you can see the area where it says a septic vent. If I may zoom in there a little bit. That would be, so I'm putting my cursor right here. That's where that vent pipe is. But other than that, and at the time too, I think it was, if you look at the septic as-built plan that was submitted to the Board of Health, the septic was in that open space. And at the time, they did not feel that was necessary to move it out of that area because the open space area was held in common ownership by the association. So the association did not have any problem with that vent pipe being there. Subsequently, when the developer was done, the open space was transferred to the town because the Conservation Commission, as it was then constituted, wanted to control that open space. So the association did not have any problem having the vent pipe there because it really does not affect the operation of the subsurface sewage disposal system. So if you will, the open space, when it was transferred to the town, and I believe the Conservation Commission is the actual local entity entrusted with the care and management and oversight of that open space. And so that's where we are. And Jennifer was very astute and observant to identify the fact that the conservation markers were not installed. And I believe she noted that, and Mr. Chalvier, Stan, correct me if I'm screwing up your last name, but don't worry, you're in good company.
It's not the first time. Chalvier.
Mine gets butchered all the time. As long as he pays him, I don't mind it either. So, yes. So I believe Stan had gone out as soon as Jennifer alerted him to the fact that that is required. And I believe because of the sequencing and timing of the when he installed it, we had already filed the request with the plan, and that was done, I believe, on Friday or Thursday last week. So we will not have had enough time to look at that and submit a revised plan, which would have been a late submittal anyway. So we are hoping that whereas Ms. Calino has witnessed it, and I will not attempt to speak for her. So I will let her take it from there, and whether, in fact, what has been done in terms of the marker is satisfactory. And I will pray that the commission find that the work is satisfactory and issue a certificate of compliance for the project. Thank you.
Jennifer?
Yeah, the site is stabilized. 2 out of 3 of the markers were installed. So I don't know if you want to stop sharing that and put up the other plan, or I can do that.
I can put up the other one.
Just so you can see where the 3 markers were suggested. Yeah, so you should see little red marks. Yeah, the 2 on the right side of the property were installed. The 3rd one, yeah, right, that one right there, was suggested in that location at the edge of the buffer zone and on the property line, just so anybody purchasing the property would be clear on where their property line was.
I make a brief statement when you're ready.
Sure. Yep. Just 1 second though, because I do want to sort of get an issue out here, and then we can come to you with is probably along the lines of what I'm going to ask. But this 3rd one is essentially in the middle of the front lawn, and at least as constituted. What is this? This is all grass and lawn, and as Mr. Etaniru pointed out, the edge of lawn goes all the way up to the. There's a forest here off to the edge, and it actually drops off quite dramatically at that point. So that's the rationale for not putting in the 3rd one. I'm not saying I agree with it or disagree with it at this point. I'm just sort of giving perspective here. And so now, Mr. Shelver, why don't you tell me, identify yourself for the record and give me some perspective. Are you the former owner of this property?
I am, Chairman. My name is Stan Shelvier. My wife, Gretchen Shelvier, is also on the line. I think at this point, she's probably dropping off our son to basketball tryouts for 7th grade, so she may not be participating, but I assure you she is listening. Neither my wife nor I are engineers or builders. We are parents. We work full-time jobs and are doing our best to raise 3 children in Easton, which is a community in which we've lived and our family has thrived since 2007. We are property owners in Easton, and up until September 15th, we were the proud owners of 51 Arbor Way. Up until about 3 weeks ago, I had never heard the phrase order of conditions. We were not involved in the permitting for the construction of the home or in the construction itself. Rather, we purchased a completed home from a builder in 2007. We moved in as newlyweds and first-time home buyers, excited about our future. At the time of the purchase and during a subsequent refinancing, we were not made aware of the 2005 outstanding order of conditions. Days before our September 15th closing on Arbor Way, we first learned from the buyer's closing attorney that there was an outstanding order of conditions that was agreed upon by the builder in the town, recorded against the deed, and that had not been discharged. This came as a surprise to us and our real estate agent, who also represented us in connection with the 2007 purchase of the property. We scrambled and were very anxious to understand what the issue was during a very stressful time, and with a lot of support and patience from Patricia Howe Dorenzo and Jennifer Carlino, to both of whom I am very thankful. We did our best to try to come up to speed, and we worked hard over the past 3 weeks to resolve any outstanding issues. The work that we undertook over the past couple of weeks included multiple phone calls and emails to town officials, seeking as much information and documentation as we could. We worked to engage an engineer to complete an as-built and prepare the requested documentation. We spent hours before and after work unearthing erosion controls in some very densely vegetated areas and steep land. We purchased lumber and materials that I personally used to make and erect 2 markers, all at the suggestion of representatives of this committee. I want to impress upon this committee that since having been made aware of these issues, we have spent a considerable amount of our time and attention to resolve this matter to the best of our ability. During this process, we learned a lot. First, it came as a surprise to us that the septic vent encroached onto town property. Again, we were not involved in the permitting of the septic system, its design or its construction, nor its approval. As new homeowners, our expectation and assumption was that the vent was placed on land that we owned. And until about 3 weeks ago, we never had any reason to suspect otherwise. I submit to this committee that our expectations and our assumptions were reasonable. Specifically on the topic of the small garden that's located near the vent, I'd like to add a personal note that the small garden and shrubs that were added were put there to conceal a white vent. After we had just moved into the property as new homeowners, we became self-conscious after one of our neighbors jokingly suggested that we paint this white vent with red stripes to make it look like a candy cane. So instead, we painted it black and added shrubs to try to conceal it. We acted reasonably in a manner that we believed was authorized, even planting a flowering shrub that was gifted to us by our neighbors in remembrance of a lost family member. And that shrub still has quite a bit of sentimental value to my wife and I. Second, we took delivery of the lawn of the home with a lawn area that had been seeded. And so it also came to us as a surprise that this land also encroached onto town land. We worked tirelessly and at our own expense to maintain the land consistent with their surrounding properties, the expectations of our neighbors, and the covenants reflected in our association documents. Again, I'd like to impress upon you that we have been proud custodians of this land, which has been an area where all children in our community play, and I'm unaware of any complaints which our efforts have caused. Finally, while I appreciate that members of this committee and many participants on this meeting, including myself, may not have been involved when these orders of conditions were agreed upon in 2005, it's hard for us to not feel as if the consequences of the inactions of others are being unjustly borne by us, despite us having acted reasonably and served as responsible custodians during our entire 14 years at the property. At least in view of the foregoing, I would respectfully petition this committee to act equitably and move to issue the requested certificate of compliance. Thank you.
Okay. So the only other, I don't know if the current, I don't know if there's any other questions from the committee before I sort of open this up for public comment, if there's any. So I'm of the mindset that the 2 markers are sufficient. I think that the other issue is one that I don't know how to address, to be quite honest. Jennifer, can you give me some perspective on the fact that the vent is on town property and that the lawn is on town property? You don't have to.
Yeah. Aside from, activity not being on their own property, but I don't actually know who maintains that Easton property, if it's the select board or if it's the commission. Yeah.
Nobody does. And in fact, we, I guess, incorrectly assumed that part of that was ours and part of it was association property. And the association never took care of it, never mowed it. So that's what we did, just because it was unsightly. And for those members of the commission, the committee that have not had an opportunity to visit the site, I would encourage you to do so. The entire neighborhood is very well maintained. We really tried to upkeep that land consistent with the surrounding properties to the best of our ability. We haven't built anything. We haven't dumped on it. Again, you know, I think we were more than responsible and have acted appropriately during our time there. And then since learning of this, trying to really do our best to resolve it.
I'm not arguing one way or the other. Maintain doesn't necessarily mean it has to be mowed. It could just be maintained as a forest, but I'm not arguing either side of it. I'm just making the observation that there's lawn on town property. That's all. It's up to the commission if they want that third marker or not.
So I personally am satisfied with the 2 markers. I think to put the third marker would actually create a hazard. In this particular case, especially the family that has moved in there as young children. And I would not want a marker in my front yard, even right next to my driveway if I had young children that could trip and over the marker. So I'm okay with the 2 or 3 markers. The fact that this was at one point association property, which was something that I had sort of had in the back of my mind, that it was association property that then got deeded over to the town. And that's the story that's being told right now. And I haven't had a chance to verify that or not. That somewhat makes sense. This property does abut conservation, another piece of property that I know is owned by the Conservation Commission, as opposed to this one is registered to the town of Easton, as opposed to specifically to the Conservation Commission. It abuts that piece of property, so it could be conservation property. It could be just town of Easton open space. I don't know at this point. I will say from a personal perspective, this property, as Mr. Shelvire has stated, is very well maintained. And I know the new homeowners will probably maintain it in the same manner, consistent with the neighborhood. I'm not concerned about this couple thousand square feet of lawn that 15 years ago was forest. It hasn't been forest for at least 15 years. But I don't know what that means to the town. But that could be something for a different day. The only concern that I would have in issuing the certificate of compliance is that does it put the current homeowner at a disadvantage? That's the only concern that I have about that particular issue. I don't know if Jennifer and I are the only 2 that went out to see the piece of property, but it looks like somebody's front lawn. And if you didn't have this plan done by the engineer, you wouldn't know that it wasn't their front lawn.
The date on that plan is the date that I learned that property was not my front lawn.
Right. Well, it's quite it's quite it is plainly obvious that appears, and if you tell me that it was seeded as lawn and it was open space according to the association and all this other stuff, I take your word for it. That's what you were told in 2007. Makes it makes sense to me that was at one time potentially the way it was, because there is open space in this development. So you drive through a little bit of a forested area to get to this edge of the development. So so I'm aware of that. I'm not all that concerned about the septic vent going 10 feet into the property. I'd like to clear the deed for this and and get everything recorded. It doesn't necessarily.
That sounds like a motion.
Jennifer wants. So thank you, Jennifer, keeping me on track. I am going to open this up to public comment. Any public comment for 51 Arbor Way? You can raise your hand or put something in the chat and I'll recognize you. Okay, so I make a motion to issue a certificate of compliance for 51 Arbor Way.
Carol, second.
Roll call vote. Caulfield's aye.
Carol, aye.
Lundin abstain.
Spady, aye.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Have a good night. Stay dry, even though you're inside.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, so next up is the meeting minutes for, I think it was 9:20. We don't have 8:20. I didn't see 8:23, right? No? Am I the only one? No, as always,
I don't actually have a copy of them, so Tish says correct.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So the anybody have any comments about the minutes for 9:20? So at the top of page 6, there was a motion made by.
You got one, Rory.
What's that? Okay.
You had your hand raised, Carol.
Right. Thank you. There was just one set of minutes to look at. Is that right?
Correct.
Right. So I have a request on page 2, the 5th line from the bottom, excluding the box at the bottom. You'll see my name there. My request is to have it right in front of me, to change it to something like, first of all, the MACC guidebook, the MACC has many publications, so I would like to clarify that that's the MACC Wetlands Buffer Zone Guidebook, please. And I'd like to refer to page 22. So if anybody wants to go look at that document that I shared, they don't have to look through the entire book. So page 22.
So we want to restate this as Ms. Lundin referenced the MACC Wetlands Buffer Zone Guidebook, page 22.
Page 22, yep. And that's table 2. And also change the language so it says that table helps us evaluate the impacts on our water quality value related to slope.
Remember, this is not a transcription, right? It's just it's meant to be a guide. I don't think we need to get into, if we get into that level of detail on all this, we'll be in real trouble. I mean, if you really are insistent upon that, we can make that language, but I think you might have to state that also. Tish can get it.
Sure, I'll try saying it again. To evaluate the impacts to water quality value related to slope.
So are we striking the last part of that when formulating slope and distance from wetlands and replacing it with to evaluate the impacts of water quality value related to slope?
I don't have that right in front of me. That's in the packet, right? Somebody help me here. Where in the packet are we?
I don't know if it was in the packet. I think it was a separate document attached to that email.
Yeah.
Let me circle back to that.
Just says correct, not in the binder. Must have been a separate email.
It was in the email with the binder, but it's attached as a separate document.
Right, my email's not allowing me to log in.
Okay, so I'm going to propose Ms. Lundin reference the MACC Wetland Buffer Zone Guidebook, page 22, table 2, to evaluate the impacts of water quality value related to slope. Does that sound correct?
Thank you, yes.
Okay. Tish, if you want, I will email you after the meeting. Okay.
Very good, thank you.
And at the top of page 6, the time reference for the recess was 7:08. It should have been 8:08. So noting those 2 changes, make a motion to accept the minutes with the 2 changes noted.
Lundin, second.
Roll call vote, Caulfield's aye.
Carl, aye.
Lundin, aye.
Katie, aye.
And Tish, if I forget, please email me tomorrow and I promise to do it, okay? But now I won't forget because I promised to do it. Okay, so next up is discussion here from Jennifer.
Yeah, it's just to take a look at the minor project exemptions under Mass Wetland Protection Act. So I put those in your binder. The stormwater, the wetland regulations don't have the same exemptions, but maybe we want to take another look at those, like the deck from the last meeting that was well over 100 feet, replacing an existing deck, the shed from tonight's meeting. Some of these things we could really be spending a lot more of our time on things with a little more substance. And so if you're interested, we can take another look at the Wetland Protection Act exemptions and see if those are appropriate for bylaw exemptions as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I read this, I said, wow, this maybe there's 1 or 2 things I'd say, I don't know about, but I'd say large majority of those 2 pages of exemptions, I'm saying, yeah, I don't really think I need to see that.
Yeah. So I can put it up on the screen. We can just quickly touch on them. If the commission is interested in that, then I can work toward a draft revision. Then it obviously comes before the commission and is posted for public comment for a full reg change. That's not actually what we're doing tonight. It's just, let's do a quick and dirty yes, yes, no, and then I'll revise and give you a draft. Yeah, we'll do it that way. So hopefully, let me know if you see that on the screen.
Yep.
Okay. So all I did was copy straight from Wetland Protection Act and just made it bigger. So the minor activities, they're for projects in the buffer zone only, not any other resource area. So if we have the similar types of projects that are only in the buffer zone, we can consider whether or not we want to exempt them. There is still a requirement, reduce the potential for adverse impacts during construction. So that requires sediment control. And it requires final site stabilization if the area is disturbed. You can decide if you want something with a administrative approval or something that requires a site inspection. But to save a lot of time for Tish and for me and for applicants, it would be great to take a look at these. So the minor exemptions that we're talking about, remember, it's only in the buffer zone, not in a wetland resource area. So not riverfront and not actually in a wetland. So if someone wants to do unpaved pedestrian walkways that are 30 inches or shorter or not as wide for private use and less than 3 feet wide for public access, that's something that can be exempt. Again, not through a wetland. If it's a boardwalk, it has to have a wetland permit. Fencing that doesn't constitute a wildlife barrier. And you can say in parentheses exactly what you think that is, right? You raise the fence off the ground a little bit to make sure that's not a problem. Vista pruning, I don't see too often. And so I don't know that has to be included in there. It requires an arborist, and most people aren't doing that. If somebody wanted to plant native species instead of planting turf, I think that's great. Converting a lawn to an accessory use to a residential area, right? So these are the decks, the sheds, the patios. I might consider that more above ground pool, not an in-ground pool. There's just too much land movement for in-ground pool, but replacing bulkheads, ramps for ADA. And these are things that are, as long as they're more than 50 feet away from a wetland or a bank, something that we should consider. If you have impervious area and you're making it grass or some other vegetated surface, that's an improvement. Things that are temporary in nature, like perk tests, monitoring well tests, those are typically exempted. Then several years ago, I was on the DEP advisory committee to add some more areas that could be exempted. So, you know, utility companies came in, mostly National Grid, or saying, look, we're just replacing telephone poles. You know, we're doing these long filings. Commissions are looking at it during a public meeting, and we're taking the pole out, we're putting the pole in, we're just adding bracing. So that's another one that could be exempt. Underground utilities within an existing paved or unpaved road or private driveway, assuming everything is in the driveway and the trench is closed at the end of each day. So there shouldn't be any sedimentation potential when they're working that way. New equipment for gas and electric facilities. I'm not sure what that would entail. That doesn't come up very often.
So the underground sewer lines does come up. We've actually had a couple of permits. That's item J there related to that. And we've actually talked to Greg Swan about having them sort of be, you know, the observation of that. And he'd only come to us if he felt like this is too close to that pond or something like that. So.
Yep. So this is an existing exemption.
Right.
It's
great. I mean, we'd already agreed to you know, have Greg sort of take that over, and he didn't come forward to do it, so we haven't had any more. But I'm just saying we had conceptually already thought about the process of, you know, that isn't really something we need to see. You know, you're bringing in a contractor, you're cutting a trench in your driveway to get the septic in, and so. Okay.
L is about installing gates. That's it. Just about gates, not about the roadway. Existing utility equipment. May want to take a closer look at that one. Vegetation cutting for road safety. So if you have to clear some shrubs or some trees for better sight distance.
We had a notice of intent, or it was an RDA, maybe one of the two, for they had to come and take some trees down, and it was abutting, you know, the vegetated wetlands. And I think it was, I don't even remember how far it wasn't right next to them, but they came in and filed an NOI or RDA for it. So.
New streetlights, signals, things like that. And that's as long as it's at least 10 feet away from a resource area and excess soil is removed from the site. Disturbed areas have to be stabilized. Paving, existing roadways, reclamation of roads. As long as they're not widened and there's no stockpiling or storing of materials right on the road edge. And then repair and replacement just of an existing driveway. Not talking about new driveways, but an existing driveway that's already in place.
Right.
Again, buffer zone only, still requires sediment control, and it still has to be stabilized when they finish the project. So you want to digest these a little bit, or do you want to sort of go through it tonight?
So I had given my impression, that in reading through it the first time this week, and I was very much in favor opposed to that. I think that we probably have to, I think we'd have to put like a square footage on decks and patios, maybe.
Okay.
That if we wanted to say, you know, I don't know. I don't even know what the number is. I'm just throwing a number up there, 500 square feet or 800 square feet or something like that, so that somebody isn't making this huge change to their structure. That's the only comment that I have about it is putting something along those lines. I think generally I'm in favor of above ground pools outside the 50-foot buffer. So, I mean, I think that those are things that I'm the only couple of comments that I have about this is I probably want to put a square footage on you know, whatever accessory structures. I think that was the section it was in.
Yes.
And so that's the only thing. Let's just put a square footage on that. So.
And how about above ground pools and in ground pools?
Oh, I think you need a permit for an in-ground pool. I think there's just way too much disturbance going on there.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Anybody else comments?
Sure, this is Carol. So I think we have to be extremely careful with the language here because our fellow residents approved our bylaw, which has mandated that the entirety of our buffer zones are resource areas. So we need to be really clear about this. I mean, there's a reason that the outer 50 feet is a resource area because it protects the inner 50 feet and it protects the wetland. So yeah, the whole thing.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, I think though that we're just trying to find that threshold, like the, you know, some of the projects that we've seen, there's been two good examples in the last couple of weeks that, you know, the deck where they were replacing the existing deck, you know, not even doing any digging or anything. They were literally, the foundation was already there. They were replacing the existing deck and they had to come in for a RDA. And the other one was this shed. Do we really need to have the shed move from one side of the lawn to the other? I really found that to be something that, you know, Jennifer could have looked at and said, okay, you know, yes, we're okay. I mean, I think is the intent here for applicants not to have to ask it all and just we use an administrative or to use an administrative approval on these kind of things?
That could be entirely your decision.
Right.
Yep.
So I mean, I think maybe we decide where that line is for that administrative approval, maybe. Because I agree, I wouldn't want the applicants to self-determining all of these things. Maybe there's some that we sit there and say, this square footage of disturbance, you know, they don't ask us anything over that square footage in less than 1,000 or whatever it is we use. They come to Jennifer or the agent. We don't have to put Jennifer's name in our regulations, although I'd like to. So, I mean, I think it's a good comment, Carol. I wouldn't want to just give them a blank check and say, go ahead and do anything you want in the outer buffer. That's not what I'm suggesting for sure. Okay,
so instead of an exemption, an administrative approval with a site inspection is more appropriate in your view?
I think for some threshold, maybe, you know, maybe under 200 square foot disturbance, maybe, or I don't know. I'm just trying to throw something out there that sort of gets us to maybe under 400 square feet. It doesn't have to come to you, but between 400 and 1,000 or something. I mean, just off the top of my head, just thinking like this.
And that's really the one, you know, the one where they're building a structure is the one that I more care about having some stamp on or someone looking at. Like I don't really want to see vista pruning at a Concom meeting. Nor do I think that like my neighbor should have to go.
That one I would, but
pull a permit to necessarily do vista pruning. But yeah, so I think it's a threshold for each one, but I think the most salient is definitely the structure, which I'm now forgetting which letter that corresponds to.
Probably E.
Yep.
E it is, yeah. You know, and I think that you're right about the fencing. We should probably put something in there that says that any, you know, has to be, you know, at least 4 or 6 inches off the ground to not impede wildlife. You know, large wildlife, it's going to impede, but they're going to go around and
jump it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's also
small dog owners. It's the bane of the small dog owner, right?
Yeah. Too bad. But yeah, that's definitely a concern. Another thing,
electric fence.
Yeah, do we want to have landowners be the ones to estimate how much disturbance there is and whether it's temporary or permanent? Most people aren't really good at estimating areas, and they're very good at underestimating areas and underestimating potential impacts.
Which one are you on, Carol?
Sorry?
Which one are you on?
I'm not on any particular alphabet letter. I'm just saying in general, having people self-evaluate is maybe not in the best interest, in the best public interest, if we can't articulate how to, you know, get some consistency with temporary and permanent impacts.
At the same time, though, and I totally agree, but I'm not seeing anything here except for, you know, E, that would necessarily have a serious adverse impact, you know, like conversion of impervious surfaces to vegetated surfaces. Like, it's always a benefit almost. Planting of native species. I certainly think you're right on E.
I mean, if we really get to the point, and maybe this is the discussion when we're, you know, that Jennifer comes to us with a draft, that we decide either to have a threshold of, you know, disturbance over X number of square feet that has to have administrative approval, or we make the decision, we can decide on this as a commission, that everything in E needs administrative approval.
Fair.
I mean, but I don't think we need to make that decision tonight. I think we're talking conceptually here about, are we open to this? It seems like we are. And give Jennifer a general direction to go into, so we get at least close to a regulation draft that we can then work with and only make, you know, some changes to, as opposed to having to, you know, rework every sentence, which I really don't think we want to do.
No, you want it as easy as possible.
Right. and then we got to go through the whole regulatory process where, you know, put it out for comment and have a public hearing, and then we can propose it, and then we'd wait 2 weeks, and then we'd have a vote on it and to go from there. We've done this 2 or 3 times in my time here, and that's about how the process goes. So it isn't something that's going to be done in 1 or 2 meetings from now. It's, you know, a few meetings. And we can get it done in a few meetings, though. Something that's very straightforward, but something more complicated becomes a little bit more challenging. So,
right. So it doesn't count for riverfront area, even for intermittent streams, because riverfront area is a resource area. It's not a buffer zone. The buffer zone itself is a resource area, but if you're more than 50 feet, then you should be able to apply this. It'll take a little more digging into how the regs are written right now to see if we can simplify things.
Yeah, and I think that was part of Carol's comment, because under our bylaw, all buffer zones are resource areas.
Yeah.
So I know that's not the case in the state, but in ours, every buffer zone is a resource area, including the outer 50. So, but understand that even under our standards, the outer 50 is treated differently than the inner 50.
Yes.
So, I mean, we could, you know, stick with this only applies to the outer 50. I mean, that's, you know, type of thing. So maybe that, you know, that shed today would have had to come before you, but you could have signed off on it, you know, because it was in the inner 50. So,
Good one, Jen. Good one. Good streamlining.
Streamline our process a little. The only other thing I have is an item not reasonably anticipated. I just did the 2 meetings for the DCR Mass Trails Grant for the Eagle Scout project at Keach Field. And it was my understanding that the commission had made a previous vote not to require a wetland permit for the boardwalks, but I didn't see that reflected in the minutes anywhere. And it's something I have to document for the grant application. So if that is something that you've done or informally did, maybe we could just revote that tonight, but in the future, that's something that does require a permit if you're building a boardwalk over a wetland. But just to clear up this.
So let's sort of split this into two discussions. So let's just take care of the permit on the, or the not needing a permit on the boardwalks for Keach Field trail work. And I think that we can do that. Let's do that. Let's clear it up so we have everything straight for the grant, and then we can have a little bit of a conversation post that. Any discussion about this at all? So I make a motion to vote to not require a permit for the boardwalks on the Keach Field trail work project.
I'll second.
Roll call vote. Caulfield's aye.
Carol, aye.
Lundin, aye.
Katie, aye.
Okay. John's
Thank you. That will allow him to keep going. You know, it can't really stop right at the very end. That wouldn't be fair.
Please keep going.
Yeah.
So I think that Jen's point is that the next project that we do with boardwalks in doing trail work, we need to have a discussion about how we handle that and getting a permit in place to do that, whether or not we have Conservation Commission members on site or not.
Well, that's irrelevant. You cannot waive the wetland permit. You can't waive it. Not under the state law and not under your bylaw. So you can waive the fee for a project like that. You can decide you want to pay the legal notice bill. You know, I can help put the permit application together. There are ways that you can make the process a little bit easier, but the requirement for a permit is a requirement. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah. That's all I had.
Carol, you had mentioned something earlier that you wanted to bring up later.
Sure. Good remembering. The Wheaton Farm barn that I believe our Concom made a pitch to the CPC about getting that barn back in shape. I ran into farmer Kevin O'Dwyer at the farm recently when I was getting some, hot cider donuts. I just had a minute to talk with him. I said, "Hey, how's it going with the barn?" He said, "Nothing has happened." And so, he was kind of counting on being able to repair that roof and make the structural changes to continue his operations. And he said that there's been no activity. And so I wonder what we can do to look into that.
So Jennifer, are you up to speed on that particular project?
Not yet. I'll have to look into it. I know even for Tufts Field, it's been a little difficult trying to find files.
So the CPC
things I need to be able to either bid the project or find the people who may have been awarded a contract. It's taking a lot more legwork, and I will look into that though for the barn.
Yeah, so there was a CPC money put forth for that, somewhere in the neighborhood of $190,000 or something along those lines, and so So there's some structural issues that need to get addressed, and as Carol said, roof and stuff like that. And I mean, there's actually more repairs that need to be done to that barn.
Right.
But this was to get it done to keep it standing.
Kind of.
Yeah. And so before Kevin had to run, but he said something about DPW. So that's, you know, when Greg was speaking earlier, that's when I connected the dots. So maybe a little phone call to him, because town meeting approved that.
Yep, it's all been approved for sure. It's a matter of the issue with any of these projects is having to pay prevailing wage and getting people to bid on it because of that. Because some of the people that would bid don't want to pay their guys differently for one project than a different project, because then their guys say, well, why am I not on that project where I'm getting paid 40% more, as opposed to I get, you know, on this other project down the street, I'm getting paid 40% less than the other guy. So that's the problems that we run into, as it's been explained to me. I haven't gone up to bid with these projects. I only know what it's been conveyed to me as far as getting bids on some of these projects, and because we're having to pay prevailing wage, which I'm not saying we don't have to pay prevailing wage. I'm just saying
that's my understanding as well. It's difficult to get people to bid on a project like that.
Yep. So
for the next meeting, because these two items we brought up that were not reasonably anticipated and weren't on the agenda for open meeting law, we do have to put them on the agenda and say, at the last meeting, we discussed it, and then ratify whatever we talked about. So don't be surprised if you see it on the next agenda and say, we already talked about that. This is an open meeting law requirement.
Fair enough.
Good one.
Okay. Anything else before we adjourn?
Just so you guys know, deer season kicked off today. So in Turkey, coyotes on the 16th. So be aware, wear your orange, watch your dogs. So it's ready to go. And you know, all Eastern conservation people are hunting. So be mindful.
Did you go hunting in the rain today?
I've been up since 4, so I cannot wait to get off this meeting. Not to be mean, but I'm getting up all since 4, so I got a short amount of sleep. Let's go. But I did see some deer. We're just waiting. I got 3 months. So.
Okay. There's your question answered, Jennifer. I told you.
You need to know? Oh, I got the whole list. Let me know.
I accept all kinds of skeletons and things.
Perfect. Whatever. Well, we can talk, because I got plenty of things if you want it. So, by all means.
Okay, so I make a motion to adjourn.
Lundin second.
Roll call vote. Caulfield's aye.
Carol, aye.
Lundin aye.
Beatty aye.
Good night, everybody.
Night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.